In today's episode, Tubi's rabbit holes are about to get even deeper. Some people may never get out. For Paramount and Warner Bros. Discovery, the waiting, as Tom Petty might put it, is the hardest part. As another fall season of college sports looms, Congress kicks around the Protect College Sports Act with some familiar protection for organizations that may not quite deserve it. Versant picks up full swing as its golf portfolio gets ever larger. Grand Theft Auto gets a special trailer debut on Netflix of all places.
Wow.
And we tell a few war stories, flash PTSD accounts about our time in the Hollywood blog wars around and between Nikki, Fink, and other culture warriors. So, Daniel, welcome. This is Next TMT Talks. I'm David Bloom with my co-founder, Daniel Frankel, on an edition sponsored by the beloved people at Hub Entertainment Research, who have some interesting stuff on Tubi.
Yeah. Bless those boys at Hub Research. Yeah, they came through, and that was their first mistake, to sponsoring us.
So we do not say that. That was not their first mistake. It is fantastic to get support from smart people who know quality journalism when they see it.
Yeah.
And this is interesting stuff, though, because we like the numbers. You are particularly number oriented, but even I, with my limitations, mental and otherwise, think a lot of this stuff is pretty fascinating. Tubi has talked a lot about taking viewers down the rabbit hole, which is they have some new stuff at the top, I guess around the top of the hole, but then they have a whole bunch of older stuff, and they use various tools, machine learning and AI and all that, to really give somebody who's into, I don't know, lacrosse or knitting, more knitting or lacrosse stuff as may be, until they get their fill. And a lot of it can be stuff, it surfaces stuff that's been around a long time, but sits in the Tubi vaults, ready to be pulled out for purposes high on the engagement level.
It stemmed from a conversation that was archived at the top of this newsletter with John Giegengack, the Grand Poobah of Hub Entertainment Research. They did for the first time, which surprised me because they've drilled down on a lot of very pertinent streaming topics. They haven't done fast full throttle yet, he told me. But it's an interesting report. It looks at the basic consumer draws to free versus paying a marginal cost for a hybrid paid platform. And one of the topics that came up was the stickiness of Tubi. Dating back to the earlier part of the decade, the beginning of late 2002, late 2023, they debuted their strategy publicly, which is taking viewers on kind of very personalized rabbit hole. I mean, it was that those commercials with those creepy rabbits that debuted in the 2023 Super Bowl. That's what that was all about.
So technically, I've been interviewing their chief content officer on stage and elsewhere since long before the pandemic. And
I talked to them too.
I don't think they were able to articulate it in quite the same way, but this is kind of been what they've been doing even longer than that. They just had creepy giant rodents.
In an industry that turns over so fast and churns strategies, etc., they've been at this for a while, and it's really starting to pay off. When you have a dense library full of stuff that isn't like appointment viewing anymore, but a lot of it's interesting, how do you compete with big SVODs that have their new shows all over billboards and are spending $20 billion plus a year?
Well, a couple of them are.
But very early on, Tubi launched an AI platform. They scrapped it. It didn't, they needed to reiterate. They kept at it, and now they have pretty good search and discovery. It maximizes that platform quite well. It gets to know what you like and want to watch, and it delivers the kind of frictionless, easy, just turn it on, find something on the homepage experience that Giegengack's research says that this is what consumers want. What I thought was really interesting is you combine that with platform control, which Roku it has it, and you combine their library. Sky's the limit. At
the Roku channel, just to clarify, Roku has a bunch of rights that aren't exactly the same as Tubi has. And those are two biggest single platforms. Is that right? Certainly they're up
For
there.
free ad-supported streaming, but I was talking about both aspects of Roku's business, the platform aspect
Right.
and the fast aspect, which they do license content in the same way, I guess Fox does, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway,
Well, I mean, the difference is Tubi has had, since the Fox acquisition, about 2 weeks after the pandemic hit, they did this nice little pickup for, I don't know, what was it, 440 million. It was a pretty nominal sum, really, and kind of got lost because there was some other things going on in the world. But they picked it up, and they have been showing a lot of Fox content, even like big Fox broadcast hits like The Masked Singer. They would take individual episodes like 24 hours later, and they would show up on Tubi. And so that would end up being a way to drive more tune in on the broadcast live competition show for the next week, but also give people, just like Hulu did for a long time before it became whatever it is now with Disney, I guess a showcase for John Landgraf to put his next FX show on. But Hulu used to be the place you caught up on all the stuff you missed on the show you like to watch on the
right.
broadcast networks. And that's kind of what Tubi is now for
You had that
Fox.
narrow little window, like you said, right around the pandemic, where Pluto TV was bought by Paramount, Zuma was swallowed up by Comcast, and you had Tubi purchased by Fox, but would seem for a decent amount of money. But that's, in retrospect, what they've done with it. It's a bargain. I mean, they really turned it into something that's
Right. I mean,
with
you figure what they paid for it versus the ad revenue they've been able to reap since then. It reminds me a little bit back in the day. And speaking of which, it reminds me a little bit of what Rupert and the Fox folks did back when they bought MySpace. And they paid a fair amount of money. It was like half a billion, something like that, with some earn out money. So it ended up being closer to $1 billion. And everybody's like, what are you doing, Rupert? You know what you're doing. They turned around, and within a month or two, they had sold, I believe, search functionality for MySpace, the ad sales of like $900 million. They made back everything they spent within weeks of the acquisition. So even if it didn't go anywhere,
right.
and it
They didn't get hurt.
didn't, they get hurt, and they tried it out, and they made some money, and they made some people I know pretty wealthy. And interesting enough, MySpace may be coming back, just in case you missed your
I
wacky
saw
font
that.
adventures. So Circus Font lives. That's all I can say.
Yeah, there's a new way to consume video that's kind of where we wound up during the halcyon days of the basic cable era, which is get there and let the moment decide for you. It's how we doom scroll social. It's how we'll watch connected TV, I think. And Tubi seems to be out in front of everybody else on that. So anyway,
it's an interesting thing to think. Yeah, it's interesting to think about it, though, because as you say, getting fed more and more and more of certain things within your feed makes sense for minute-long videos. Does it make sense for 22-minute or 44 or 2-hour videos? And it's an interesting question. I guess we're going to find out. Also, do people have as much patience for an extended view? And I think they do. I don't want to go searching.
They have been investing in sort of creator economy content for several years now too. That's another aspect of the business that I didn't talk. They were already partnering with TikTok. I brought them up partially too because they announced their latest usage benchmark, 110 million monthly active users, which is a lot.
Yeah, that's up 10% in 5 months, 4 months, something like that.
I'll have to find that out. That's a good context.
It's been because they announced 100 million before Stream TV Denver, but not a lot before Stream TV, which was in June. I'm thinking they've got some nice growth going on here that's worth noting. If they didn't belabor that point, they probably should have. Because where are the viewers coming from? Is everybody broke and just stuck with FAST because they can't afford any more SVOD subscriptions? I mean, It's kind of interesting to think about. Or is it just, are they taking share away from other free ad supported TV platforms? Are they taking it away from Zumo and Pluto or the Roku channel? I mean, it's an interesting question.
It is. It is.
Maybe John Giegengack and the Hub Entertainment Research people can do that in their second Full Throttle Fast report. Just throwing that out there, John.
You could lead that, Dave. You could be the, well, I mean, I've never conducted a survey, so I don't think I could do one.
No, John knows what he's doing. I'm not worried about that. I'm just saying, hey, you need some grist for, the sequel. It's always tough. Like, what's the sequel? How do we top the first one? Apparently easy enough for like Spider-Man, which had the best second week, third best second week. This sounds weird. It's just Hollywood. Third best second week in history, behind a Star Wars movie and an Avengers movie. So
yeah,
Tom Rothman and Sony are laughing to the bank.
It did well.
Yeah.
Yes, they're Sony.
It's continuing to do well. Apparently, there's a boundless appetite for Tom Holland swinging through the skyscrapers.
Yeah, like I said, I don't understand
alienation.
it. I mean, 20 years after Tobey Maguire. I mean, it's been 20 years, right? It was 2002, 2003 that they.
That's about right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just there was that animated thing they did about 3 or 4 years ago.
Spider-Man is 80 years old. I mean, Stan Lee came up with it, I think, in the 50s, 70s, right. 70 years old. So Spider-Man's been around a while. I'm sure there are far more learned Spider-Man people than me, but it's been around as a comic book and much else. I mean, there were TV shows, right? Animated TV shows, all kinds of things. So it's been part of the zeitgeist for quite a long time. But anyway, that being said, speaking of hanging around, stuck in a web of their own weaving, Paramount and Warner Bros. Discovery are on hold. And they both reported quarterly numbers this week. And they weren't terrible by any means whatsoever, but they better get to getting married soon because, Warner Brothers has been making pretty good money off its cable operations, but revenues were down 11% in the quarter, year over year. And it's like, whoa,
you gotta
that's a lot.
You gotta make a lot of pizzas to pay off that debt. You gotta get the synergies have to work to create more than the sum of their parts.
Right. And it's important to remember they still have, I think, $29 billion from the last time they got bought that they got to pay off. And there's some stuff and it's going to get rolled in and mushed in for a total of $80 billion-ish, maybe a little bit more than that with these ticking fees. But of course, they've got the comfort of those ticking fees for every quarter of delay in the closing of the Paramount deal. And they've got a $7 billion termination fee if Paramount walks. So they're okay. They're okay. And I think Laura Martin over at Needham and Dan Medina said, it's HBO Max is hitting on all cylinders. Robert Fishman over at Moffat is not so sure. He says if they don't do the deal, they got a problem because they'll be left with 2 subscale streaming platforms. And that's not good because they long-term won't be able necessarily to compete against Amazon, Netflix.
So even Disney's when they're combined, they'll be considered subscale.
No. If the deal doesn't happen.
I see. Okay.
So that it doesn't happen and they're just on hold, just waiting. It's like, they're putting out numbers and Paramount's numbers are okay, up a little bit. Guidance wasn't great. I think very modest, like 1% revenue growth for the next quarter. I think it may have been one of them. Let me just look real quick. One of them just said, Fishman kept his neutral rating on Paramount and dropped the company's price target by $3 to $11. So that's a big cut because it's just not making any money. Right? I mean, they're doing okay. And they'll make more money with football this fall. But, if you drop it nearly a quarter, that's as your price target. Usually price targets are aspirational. We think it'll get all the way up here. And it's like, no, I want to take it down. And it was pretty close to the ground to begin with. So not a lot of clearance there. But it's an interesting time for both these companies. I got to imagine for the employees just sitting there waiting. But when's that sort of Damocles dropping? When's that hair going to go ding?
Just the idea of the ticking fee, though. Every day that goes by, every moment, your debt gets bigger.
Well, not for 7 more weeks, but
$7 million a day. It's well,
but it's a quarter to $7 million a day, but it's really every quarter. So
I know, but I'm just breaking it down.
And again, when you're doing 111 billion, and everybody keeps calling it 110, but it's like it's 110.7, and now you're going to add another 1.3. By my counts, that makes it 112 billion before you can close the deal. So call it, prospectively 112 billion, but it's still a lot. It's more money than I make in a week, and God knows we're swimming in the green here at Next TMT and Next TMT Talks, the media center of the world. We both had some conversations shared in our newsletter, our free twice a week newsletter, out today, the same as this podcast, talking about our unlikely survival amid some of the stuff that went on back when Nikki Fink ran Hollywood as a reign of terror. And
there's a new newsletter in town. You might want to share that from one of the LA Times refugees. LA Material, it's called. Julia Turner, former LA Times Mucky Muck, who Matt Hamilton is investigative reporter, I guess worked with her. They looked at the estate of Nikki Fink 4 years after her death, publishing a book that she had long had in the works. I guess in the early 90s, the late entertainment reporter started a book on Mike Ovitz that ballooned in scope over time to include...
Back when Ovitz was the man who ran Hollywood before he made a really ill-considered decision to become number 2, not number 1, but number 2 at Disney.
Right.
And then Michael Eisner realized that was a bad decision.
Yeah, it always seemed that way to me. It's not
the third act. That's that third act for Ovitz. I mean, he's a great art collector and done very well as an investor. But that third act was not. Disney was bad but short, and then he did another. I think it was Artist Management Group or something like that.
Yeah,
and that was both promising. Had a bunch of TV deals. We got way out over its skis at a time when TV series financing was pretty risky. So
anyway, Nikki Fink is a polarizing, I guess you could say.
No. There's one poll.
Business journalist. Everybody hated her. She worked for a lot of platforms, LA Times among them. I ran into a lot of people who edited her and said nice things, mostly bad. She had a outsized presence doesn't do it justice. In the late aughts, when Deadline was really emerging, just eating. I was at Variety when they were eating their lunch, and we were laying people off left and right. At one point, management makes this desperate, awful attempt to buy her out, and she laughs in their face. She, as a one-person show, brought a big media company, Reed Elsevier and Variety, to heel, and that was, I'd never seen that before.
She made fun of them too. But I think it's important to note. So I worked the last couple of years. Nikki was.
Well, let me get to that. We'll get to that, David. I know you have, but I just want to set up what the new hullabaloo is about. So she was bought out by Jay Penske, who now owns most of the Hollywood trades, Hollywood Reporter, Variety, Deadline, and told that whatever entertainment journalism you do belongs to me. So I guess
that was the deal. Yeah, that was the deal when she was there. I
think it was a $14 million deal. Turned her into a millionaire overnight. She was notoriously reclusive, and I believed so because I worked with Hunter Walker, who's now a political reporter, but he was an ambitious young Columbia graduate who was determined to make his name. And one of the things he was determined to do was get a picture of Nikki Fink. She was notoriously recluse. She never went out. Gawker was paying I think $1,000 bounty. He just wanted the notoriety. He was working for Richard Johnson, the Page Six guy who had a new assignment. He was out here in LA starting the Daily, which was like, at the dawn of the iPad, they were trying to make a newspaper for it. And I was interviewing with Richard per Hunter, who set it up for me, meeting with him, cordial meeting, nice. Hunter walks in, and he has the first pictures of Nikki Fink beyond her younger, more collegiate years that we'd ever seen. And
yeah, the only photo that was available of her was from probably her days at Wellesley. It looked very much like the yearbook photo from your college yearbook back when they did that, with this sort of sweeping hair, black and white, some pearl earrings,
right.
intensely
Circling back to the
photoshopped.
book, though, I guess it was scuttled us up a couple times. She thought she'd get sued by Ovich, so she'd never write it. Finally, she's broadened out the book. It's called Hubris. It's about broader Hollywood, Eisner, and all the people you were just talking about, and includes a lot of names, a lot of skeletons buried in various places that she unearths. And she has to deal with Simon & Schuster. Penske stops her. They litigate in court, and I guess
Actually, the litigation in court was ultimately about not this, but her attempt after she flounced out of Deadline to start a new publication.
right. But this came up, I guess. This is according to LA Material.
Yeah.
This came up, and she ends up, I guess, with the rights, in her view, to publish the book, but her health's failing, and she, passes away at the age of 68 in 2022. If you believe this woman, Connie Yu, who says she met Nikki Fink at a Wellesley College reunion event in Culver City, which is like a mile away from where I sit here. She said she met her in 2015 and developed a mentor relationship with Nikki. And Nikki, upon her death, wanted her to publish the book. And anybody who knew, I was getting calls and competing with Nikki 5 years before that, and she never went out. She was in poor health. Everybody knew it. She talked about it. And I just don't see her doing that. I know New York Post wrote about it. They don't see it happening either. So there's a lot of questions about who Connie Yu is and if she's really going to publish the book, but supposedly has a lot of damning stuff in it and will muckrake in only the way Nikki Fink could, and kind of her way of taking down big names from the grave. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I dominated here. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to say I actually worked with her during her last days at Deadline.
Yeah.
Jay Penske used to take everybody on the staff out to dinner around Christmas at an extremely nice restaurant. Jay has the exquisite taste of a well-educated billionaire's son, who's also annoyingly handsome and well-spoken and pleasant and married to a Victoria's Secret model. Other than that, the guy's just full of shortcomings. But he said at that point, he said when he bought Nikki's operation, and back then the word was 12 million and maybe it's 14 million, it's ballpark, whatever. It had never made a nickel of advertising revenue because it was just Nikki coming out of the writer's strike. She had been writing a thing for the LA Weekly and then got so much stuff coming in because writers sitting there hitting refresh, trying to find out the latest thing on the strike. They started giving her stuff. She got all this sort of inside material from all these folks that were plugged in and disaffected. That's a reporter's dream, right? So she launches a blog at a time when blogs were not really well monetized, well structured, et cetera, et cetera. She launches it. It becomes a hit because she apparently has nothing else to do except endlessly roll calls and gossip and then turn it into Toljas. And it worked. Jay, who was looking to build some sort of presence, bought a series of personality-driven blogs like Hollywood Life and BGR and stuff like that. And this one. And it was really interesting to go work there after he'd added some actual journalists who Hollywood knew and trusted not to just flame them. Nikki kept on flaming, but they had other stuff. But she kept on flaming and eventually, and by the way, was flaming Jay Penske. I happened to be copied on a number of emails she sent to Jay around the decision of Bret Easton Ellis to offhandedly mention in a Twitter post back when it was called Twitter. Oh, apparently I'm living in the same apartment building as Nikki Fink. And she went nuts.
I remember that.
And oh my God. And I was handling social media on behalf of Deadline along with a bunch of other stuff. And so I got copied on all this, trying to fix it all. But, Ellis, oh my God, his agent was on vacation. The hapless young woman who was the assistant just got roasted by Nikki in a way that probably still, speaking of PTSD, probably still impacts that young person's life and their sleep patterns. She was crazy. And you don't want to dismiss, particularly women, as crazy, but there was a lot of behavior that was, shall we say, not typical by the broad array of humanity. And we'll just leave it at that.
There was this moment, I worked for Sharon Waxman, and they were kind of, she was trying to move into that territory.
Yeah. Oh, they went back and forth. Oof.
Yeah, but there was one point where I guess they were friends early on during Sharon, when she moved out here from New York, and she was
my spouse, by the way. Yeah. Yeah.
She was trying to tap into that. And, she wrote this open letter we were all, the staff was CC'd on, remember we bonded over wicker chairs. Let's go back to that, Nikki. It was kind of surreal. Nikki wasn't, into reconciling at that point. And
no, she did for somebody who didn't get out much. And I will say this, the people I worked with at Deadline, by the time I was there was probably 12 to 15 people. So a good sized staff. None of them had ever met Nikki unless they had met her years before working at some other place. And so there was one or two like that.
Yeah.
But other than that, none of us ever met her. We just had these phone calls with her. So she was this weird sort of Charlie's Angel, anti-angel, Charlie, but, calling on the phone all the time. It was an odd place. And then on top of that, when she would leave, they replaced her with two people who also never came in the office, but at least were seen in public. Didn't have any idea how to manage human beings anymore than Nikki did.
That's a prerequisite for working in communications, I think.
Well, some people take it to another level, and they were both overachievers in that regard. So we'll just leave it at that.
On my social feed this morning, this note from David K. Johnston, a former LA Times writer who says he was a pod mate of Nikki Fink's. And he talks about, I hear there's this book being written. I just want to set the record straight. He just goes off on her. I mean, he sees it as his duty to take down poser journalists, and she was one of them. And I guess he was an investigative reporter, won a Pulitzer, according to his bio. But he did not have kind things to say about her. I read into it, like I said, I worked for Lou Harris at The Wrap, who edited her a few times. She was tricky, and I guess she did there were some ethical lapses, I guess. She was crazy. But the bottom line is, she did build something. She did change digital journalism for the better. I don't know.
She really didn't. I just want to say that she started something in a remarkable way with a distinctive, extraordinary, acidic, scorching voice. She absolutely started. She did not build it. It was still just her. When Jay gave her an unreasonable amount of money to get her into his portfolio, and then he put in an ad sales staff and hired journalists who had names from Hollywood Reporter and Variety and other places, who were known quantities, who had experience and perhaps a little more polished demeanor with humanity.
So I got angry emails from her in the late Sunday nights 15 years ago, accusing me of cribbing her box office reports. And
right, because the numbers you got were so different from the ones she got from the same places for the same movies.
She probably was crazy and awful to work for, and say what you will. Maybe she wasn't a media strategist, but I don't think she was in it just for the money. She was in this thing.
No, she was narcissism,
fame. She liked to
chasing the story.
Yeah, and I think the same. I thought Sharon Waxman was a dark, nasty person, but I feel the same about her. I think she's selfish and serves her own pathological needs, but I do think deep down inside, she wants to tell a story. That's what she's in it for. And the Wrap could collapse, and she'd still be doing this. And she has good instincts about it, and has broken some big stories, and has made a name for herself. All we have left now is I and I talk about this in the newsletter, is, I'm also trying to like get sponsorship and get our trip to IBC set up. You have to wear both hats now. You're a publisher and writer. Unseemly, yes, but that's the reality. And I'm looking at this phenomena called Best in Show. My last employer, Dave, you work with them too, Future. They sell this competition at conferences where you, for $700, 525 pounds, UK, you enter your software or whatever product it is, and their team of experts judges it. And if you win, you get to put, winner, best of show, IBC 2026. And I know savvy marketers who've bought into that. And I just don't understand why. They used to award a best of show for Next TV when I edited it. Not once was I asked, hey, could you recommend somebody as a judge for our expert panel? Not once did I run into anybody in our circle that was asked for this. I think it's just like everything else that company does. They're just selling stuff for the sake of selling.
Maybe they asked Nikki Fink.
So say what you will.
Well, yeah. But look, lots of skis out there. Dana Harris, as I know, or Dana Harris Bridson, the second editor ever of IndieWire, has departed. We'll see what they figure out to do with IndieWire over at Penske. It's always been sort of neither fish nor fowl. It was an indie film focused thing founded by Eugene Hernandez, who had done created the LA Film Festival. Then he started IndieWire. Then he went off and he was running the Film Society of Lincoln Center, and Film Comment, I think, was connected to that. And now he's the guy at Sundance, the pinnacle of indie films. So that's the roots of IndieWire. But these days it writes all about TV, which isn't very indie, and it writes about awards all the time. And that was Jay trying to wedge it into his bigger awards season writing, golden goose. So we'll see what happens to this publication. It got tucked away over with some live event stuff that weren't really good fits, and it hasn't done well, I understand, from people who were inside. And we'll see if your former buddy, Brett Lang, who's taking over Dana, can do anything with it. Dana herself is off to, she has a new endeavor called Flamingo, which is also on Beehive, the platform that we use for Next TMT, to track basically the folks that are trying to create story, whether it's a big studio or a YouTube creator or somewhere in brands, all are trying to do this stuff. And it's going to track all that stuff. So great. That's absolutely fertile ground, areas that we kick at all the time, perhaps with less focus. Big shock there. So we'll see what she does. She was trying to do an interesting thing, which was future of film with IndieWire, which makes a lot of sense. And that is something also that we talk about from time to time without our little special bug that's just future of film. Because that is kind of the crucial thing now. Where is film going? What is it going to look like? What, Christopher Nolan is kind of a throwback, right? Well, who's making the stuff for the future, and how does that work, and how's it happening? So I think that's kind of the core of these things here.
I think they've probably talked about it internally a lot at Penske. You have these, I guess, multiple brands that at one time THR and Variety were very similar and competed with each other. Now they're serving the same master. How do you differentiate them? How do they complement
and still get the same advertisers to pay to be in
I think they insist
both.
They're competing.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know how it all works. IndieWire to me has always been confusing. It started off as a destination for information about the indie film business, and now it's for decades it's been about something else. I don't know where it fits in there and what it. I guess like everything else, it draws awards blood. So
yeah, but and Toss went over there and writing about movies, and all of a sudden she had to learn film. Learn TV, writing about movies, and all of a sudden she had to learn TV, which was not her métier, but that's not the point. So anyway, speaking of métiers, Netflix is going to do an advanced look by 6 hours of the extended look at the biggest video game that will ever be, which is coming in November. Grand Theft Auto 6. They're doing an extended look. The first trailer in more than a year, 2 months before it actually comes out. And Netflix will have it 6 hours before everybody else. And they're already promoting this thing. And what's interesting to me is 6 hours, they believe, is enough to do whatever it took for them to get that deal.
So that represents the high point of the business, Grand Theft Auto. That's like the most popular intellectual property there is.
And very cinematic. I mean, it's, I suspect this extended look will feel a lot like a movie. That's certainly what GTA 5 and GTA Online are known for, is very high quality video graphics generated on the fly that are quite impressive. It's the newest, coolest technology. They have been working on this. They have delayed the release date multiple times in the last 3 years. Finally, they set a date, said this is going to be it, November 18th or 19th, I think. Nobody else is releasing a game that month. Nobody that has a substantive game. They're just like, you get November. We understand. And, the conversations are, it's going to be the biggest thing here. But the fact that Netflix says that having it 6 hours ahead of time, actually, the fact that they say any trailer from a game is worthy of spotlight treatment is interesting by itself. That this game, we still get value only having it 6 hours before everybody else, I find doubly fascinating.
I don't get pointy-headed on you, but sure, you have a nation that likes to send people to prison. It's a piece of capitalism, like everything else, incarceration. And tatting yourself up like a prisoner has now become a thing. And now in your spare time, you want to be a bad boy. You want to steal stuff and shoot people and live that bad boy life, that gangsta life.
Well, there are those who attribute, for instance, the style in certain African American communities of not wearing shoelaces or a belt on your clothes as signifying that you were in prison, and they took those away as a anti-suicide measure that is standard in the jails, and you're signifying that you're bad enough to go to jail.
Definitely,
and that became a look, and that goes back to the 90s at least.
Yeah, I mean, for a country with vast inequities, and I won't get into that here. I mean, you could definitely go down those lines.
Probably for the best.
Probably for the best, right. But I'm just saying, we're a long way away from when Tipper Gore tried to get my parents to take my Iron Maiden records away. I mean, we're just...
out of your cold, dead hands.
I know I'm getting old. I sound like an oldster, and that's what I am, but damn, I mean, I wish they were...
Yeah, this is back when Iron Maiden was still a maiden, as opposed to a matron. Iron Matron is what you should call it now.
But this was the Paul Di'Anno years.
I like that one,
Dave. I'm running.
Means nothing to me, but go with God.
Iron Maiden, Wedding Killers. So yeah, that's my big social commentary of the day.
We are a long way from Tipper Gore and the PMRC. So Parents Media Resource Consortium or Collective or whatever it was. Yes, we're a long way from that. And one of the things we're not too far from, though, is a possible return of another 1980s nightmare, the NCAA. The Protect College Sports Act is knocking around in Congress. We'll see if the Senate can get its act together. They've got clock ticking. Both the Congress and the Senate and the House are looking to go on recess going into the elections. And so if they don't get it done in the next couple of weeks, it doesn't happen. And what's interesting is it does try to clean up some of the transfer every year kind of thing. There are people who've been in school playing sports for 7 seasons, 8 seasons, who have played at 3 or 4 schools. The name, image, likeness stuff, paying players is great, but now we've got this race far beyond what these schools can handle. There was an estimate in a study, I think it was the GAO, General Accounting Office in the U.S., something like 93% of colleges and universities are losing money on their sports programs. 93%.
I hear they're debating when David Bloom writes about a topic, does he have to get 1 foot down in bounds or 2? Bounds being TMT topics.
I just have to suggest that I have possession as I come down with it. And that's all I need.
Oh, you just gotta have control of the ball when you get the ground. Okay.
Control the ball. It doesn't matter where I land because God knows where that would be. It could be inbounds, outbounds, somewhere, but just have possession and control of the ball.
Yeah.
So that being said, though, this act has some things that I think are worthwhile, but it also includes an antitrust exemption for the NCAA, which is like, no, no, not those clowns who abused and took advantage and exploited athletes for decades with the most arbitrary stuff you can imagine over the most picayune, ridiculous details to kind of protect college athletes and student athletes. It's like, not those clowns. No, bad. So
Yeah, it's just
that is part of the bill, and that is actually one of the things. And it also, the bill does, it goes towards, but certainly doesn't go to turning athletes into actual employees of the schools with which they play. And that, of course, doesn't play well with the more conservative side of the aisle because they already have players' organizations that would create unions. And of course, that's never fun. If you're a conservative, that's not good. So there's a lot of stuff here that means it's still going to be tough to get this thing hammered out and pushed through. I don't know. I'm not convinced that all those provisions trying to serve all those different masters will in fact save college sports, quote unquote. But
I
we
hear
are
there's
coming up
a Lane
on it.
Kiffin clause that says
There
that
is not. There is not.
I read that this morning that like if you take another job as a coach, you have to finish the season before you can start your new job, which I thought was a smart.
Well, that's not even a Lane thing, though. I'm sure there's some Louisiana or Mississippi people trying to get back in Louisiana for that. But I mean, it's not like he's the first coach that ever did it. And in fact, the challenge is okay. So you have got a new job between the time your regular season ends and the month before any postseason kicks in, and there are companies or other schools that want to hire you. Do you really want to, having taken that job, then go back and coach at the the lame chicken bowl or something? Is that really what you want to do? I don't think that that's fair to anybody. So once again, it's one of these things where you're trying to make a point about something that distresses you, but it's not a good law. Impairing contracts, also a thing that shouldn't play well with conservatives, I would think. What do I know?
I forgot what bowl USC was in last December. It was
So did USC, by the way.
yeah, I mean, but they decided to play in it, and they played
Well, they
Texas
still have
Tech,
their coach,
no, Texas Christian,
Texas
and
TCU.
yeah,
And
they
now they have TCU's coach, former head coach, as their defensive coordinator. So we'll see how that goes.
right. Both teams were decimated by
Yeah.
non-participation. Part of it was people in the transfer portal. You had people who don't want to hurt themselves for their NFL aspirations, which to their credit start very soon after that. You can't get hurt. And they have guys who just opted out for various reasons. And it was
And it was not just random people. It was like a lot like starting quarterbacks and,
right.
Key wide receiver or linebacker. I mean, core people to the team's success on
Yeah,
both
USC
sides.
was out without their 2-star wide receivers. Both were NFL bound. The defense,
Yeah.
I didn't recognize a single player. It was just decimated. And bowl season was a traditionally core part of that gambit. I mean, now it's like if you're not playing the playoffs, the players just don't seem into it. I don't envy a coach having to get a team ready for that. And say what you will about Lincoln Riley, the USC coach, we took flack for that. He's already kind of on the hot seat. That made it a little hotter. Also, USC baseball had a pretty good year. They made the Sweet 16 in the College World Series. Hadn't done that for a while. And because the team all the money goes to the football program for NIL, mass exodus in the transfer portal. They're starting from square one. And yeah, it's just one story. It's one school, kind of a high profile.
And by the way, it's one school that's private, extremely well supported by alumni that is still kind of getting its act together. I think a lot of this stuff, but when it does, it'll be fine. I mean, they just opened this $220 million new performance center named after a Bloom that's not related to me, unfortunately, because I'd sure like to get a piece of that. or at least get a tour.
Yeah.
But it's actually on the grounds of the old practice facility that was named after another longtime, now very pissed off alum of the of the school. So
you're trying to hook up massive TV contracts to this very volatile, very inequitable situation. I don't, it does need to get sorted out. We're in agreement there, and it needs to get
right,
sorted out
but
soon.
this is the it's been particularly difficult because there's so many hands in the till, so many conflicting priorities, conflicting agendas, and a Congress that is, shall we say, not very functional. Okay, so were I the sort of person who goes on Kalshi, I would probably, or one of those prediction markets, I'd probably say it doesn't get through. But stranger things have happened. It just feels like there's too much stuff, too many things that are like, no, we're not going to go there to keep it from going all this. Trump will sign it because Trump wants to save college sports, just like he saved the New York Generals and the USFL. He wants to save it.
He wants to take attention off of the Epstein files and the Iran war and the economy. It's anything that
the reflecting pool and on and on and on.
Say, since
so
we're
many
on
things.
sports, our favorite topic, what did you think of the big kerfuffle in the WNBA yesterday? That was a shitty foul. I mean, it was a definitely deserved flagrant level.
Yeah,
two.
it was definitely a flagrant two, and I think Dejanay, the person who did it, to Sophie Cunningham, who's the new sort of it girl. By the way, Sophie Cunningham went to one of my 3 high schools and went to my college alma mater. So
following the footsteps of greatness.
Right. Yeah. Obviously, only blondes come out of Rockbridge High. I say that, and I've acquired my blondness with age, not wisdom, but certainly with age.
We still see you that way, Dick.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's like when I wear glasses, people think I'm smarter, which I really don't get. But that being said, Cunningham has become something of a lightning rod. Some of it of her own doing, defending Caitlin Clark, her teammate, doing a very funny thing. A difficult former teammate who was pointing at something, and she did a long thing like this, became an internet meme. So she's the one that gets hammered yesterday. It's not to be missed, but shouldn't be overplayed, that she's a very attractive blonde woman and playing in a league and straight.
Right.
And conservative, at least modestly, though she makes a point of not saying she has conservative political beliefs, in a league that is heavily Black and queer and leans Democrat, I think.
Right.
So all of that gets mixed into this sort of soup that's pretty nasty. On top of that, she spoke out against having trans male to female athletes involved in women's sports. And that has been its own fracturing cultural conversation. So it's hard to pull all those strands aside and say, can she play? She's a good, solid reserve. She scores something like 12, 14 points a game, gets a few rebounds, hustles. And she's got Caitlin's back, and Caitlin, another white girl who's supremely talented.
I do applaud Caitlin, and they tried to turn her into a culture warrior. She's just been like, I'm just going to ball. And she's done that very well.
She does.
And she doesn't, she seems to understand that she was given a lot more to start off than a lot of people who built the league. And I think she's sensitive to it, but she doesn't make a thing about it. She just, I'm going to get better. And she has this year. I mean, it's her 3rd year in the league. She overcame a lot of injuries her 2nd year. I think she's rebuilt her body and she's back. She's having some great games and then leading that team that was, pretty downtrodden before she arrived. And I felt like that conversation was finally going away. We had to we could get to our day without Outkick cluttering our feeds with utter bullshit. And this happens. And I don't think
or you could just not subscribe. There's that. But hey, I don't want to encourage anybody to cut people off. But it would be great if we could get out of that conversation. It's hard to do it in this country, in this era. But Clark, to her credit, is trying not to. Cunningham has made her choices in some areas, and others are just stuff. It's basketball. That's what she said. That's what Dejanay said yesterday. Credit to both of them for that. It's like, don't
Dejanay's a
stir
hell of a
this
player. I've
pot.
watched her play. She's,
Oh, she's great. Yeah, she's tough. She's tough
I
cookie.
don't
She got some mustard in that Dejanay. That's all I'm saying.
why she's, pulling that clothesline shit and going to white privilege in the locker room afterwards. That's just
Yeah,
going to
it's
get
like
you attention you don't want. I don't think that's the way to go.
you're not going to get an extra shoe deal out of it, girl. I mean, so whatever. Yeah, my real concern out of all this is that I hope none of this. The WNBA's got a new player contract. The players are making much more money.
Good.
They're getting great ratings. Everything that I've seen so far, great ratings on several contracts. They're doing well. The players are better treated than they've ever been in a quarter century now of existence. Don't screw it up. Run with this puppy. So I'm hopeful that they're able to get past some of this stuff that ain't helping.
Don't screw it up, Dave. Only somebody gave us that advice earlier
years
on,
ago,
maybe.
like decades ago. But no, it's like now they're going, well, got a little late for you. But anyway, you survived Nikki Fink, so that's a win. With that, we should probably wrap this puppy up. You know? So one last little tiny bit. Versant closed this deal with Full Swing, which does golf and baseball simulator things, and it's high end and all that. But what I'm fascinated with Versant is they keep doing deals, and this is one that goes right into their golf portfolio. They've got Golf Now, Golf Pass, and of course the Golf Channel. And so they just keep layering in this golf vertical integration for the passes to get, tee times, right? I don't know what Golf Now is, but then Golf Channel has all kinds of golf tournaments and, conversations and stuff. So you keep layering that in, and that gets very interesting, and it suggests Versant's vision of itself moves well beyond just being a collection of cast-off cable networks, which they needed to do, right? But I think it's really smart. You're just seeing them taking action. I mean, they've only been an independent company since January, and I think this is their second deal already. And, they've rebranded MS Now, and they're doing a lot of things with that. CNBC has lots of stuff going. I just think they're really interesting, even if they're not big.
It's fun to watch people try. You're a big company. You're spread thin. You have all these media companies that build up these big brands. They have value to them. Do you want to see them just sort of trashed like MTV, or do you want to see them reiterate to the new digital world? Because there is value there.
Yeah.
Give them good talent. They can focus in on it 24/7. And this is the result, thoughtful, strategic decisions that breathe new life into stuff that does have value. So,
yeah. And this is really crucial. We were talking about Paramount Skydance and Warner Brothers Discovery, and they're going to have something like 53 or 56% of all the cable channels, or at least the viewership of cable channels, if and when they merge, and maybe less if CNN gets spun off, but around half. Okay, throws off a lot of cash, though clearly Warner Brothers is getting a little smaller, a little quicker than people expected. Certainly the analysts expected. What do you do with that? How do you make that matter? Not just as a tuck-in, leftover, dying platform. So that's first, it suggests some directions to go. That's all.
So I got to get on the road to Berkeley, California, take the kid back to school. We didn't do it this weekend, so
okay, sort it out. Have fun. Good luck. Drive safe. Come back in one piece. Same with your son, though he's got one more semester at Cal?
Maybe two. Depending on how ambitious we are in the fall semester.
Speed that one up, son, or start paying your own way. That's just me. Anyway, have a good drive. This is David Bloom with Next TMT, and this is your podcast, Next TMT Talks. I'm here with my co-founder, partner, Daniel Frankel. Thanks to the support and largesse of our beloved sponsors. This week's edition was backed by Hub Entertainment Research, which also does lots of interesting stuff. You can get Next TMT which stands for Technology, Media, and Telecom, at nexttmt.com for free twice a week in your mailbox. You can also subscribe on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify to this podcast in audio and or video form. And we're out there on the socials sometimes. We're out there. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Please subscribe. Thank you, everybody, for everything. This is David Bloom with Daniel Frankel. Over and out.